Allô, Nissan? Hey, grosse tempête, hein?
Hey, Karine, oui, je sais, les vilains bonhommes de neige sont de retour.
Mais avec le Nissan Rogue à traction intégrale, c'est pas stressant.
Exact, il est conçu et testé pour nos hivers. Oh, Karine, il y a un bonhomme dans le Rogue.
Ah, c'est correct. J'ai allumé les sièges chauffants.
Ah, bien joué, Karine. Maîtrisez toutes les conditions. Louez le Rogue S 2026 à partir de 0,4% jusqu'à 36 mois, incluant une réduction fidélité de 0,5% pour les clients Nissan admissibles. Jusqu'au 2 mars, sur approbation de crédit, les conditions s'appliquent. Détails chez Nissan.
All right, welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. Alain Vaillancourt has joined us in studio, a city councilor for Vaillancourt, Côte-Saint Paul, and he is also head of public security on the executive committee of the city of Montreal, and what a time for public security. Of course, there is story after story in the news. The devastating fire that broke out in Old Montreal tragically claimed the life of a 43-year-old mother and her 7-year-old daughter, both of whom from France. And now the Quebec's chief coroner has ordered a public inquiry. Alain, that's happened, right? There will be a public inquiry on that front?
There will be a public inquiry. She's going to decide it's Coroner Kamel that's going to be doing it.
Yeah.
Either combining it with the last year's fire or doing it individually.
And were you in favor of that?
Absolutely.
You were, right?
Absolutely.
The administration wanted the public
absolutely.
inquiry.
Wanted a full public inquiry to make shed light on everything.
So in light of that, we have, CCTV footage, right? We got the video camera footage that our colleagues at Nouveau obtained that showed a person breaking into the restaurant there on the first floor and a person kicking down the front door. Left moments later, smoke seen coming out of the entrance. We have this story from just a day or two ago where shots were fired. Three young people, 17, 19, 20, I don't know how young that is, were arrested for these shots fired as well. There seems to be some connections surrounding all of this. Some tremendous reporting on gangs in the city. So, Alain, from your perspective, what are we seeing in our streets?
I'm not in the operations side of the police, but it's clear. Before I start, actually, I wanted to give my sympathies to the mother and her 7-year-old daughter that died, Mrs. Gerardi and Véran. It was a tragic fire, and I just want to publicly, give my sympathies to her husband and her family that's back in France. Mm-hmm. As far as what's going on, it's clear that, Chef Fadi Daguerre will have a press conference at 2:00 this afternoon to shed light on all the extortion aspect that seems to be going on, all the things that we're putting in place to stop it, and what to expect in the future. What we see is it seems to be a reorganization of organized crime in the city and Quebec City, where different types of gangs are trying to go on to what historically was perhaps organized crime turf. These are gangs that are disorganized. They don't have a hierarchy like we would normally see in an organized crime family or organized crime units. So it makes it difficult on that end because they're disorganized and they don't have much. They do what they want, where they want to go. They don't have much thought as to who they're attacking and when they're attacking. So it's difficult. I don't have details on what's going on specifically, but I can tell you that we're working actively to stop it. We just made 7 arrests in St. Leonard. Mm-hmm. And what's fascinating is that those 7 arrests were 7 underage youths.
Uh-huh.
So that's a phenomenon that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of young 14, 15-year-old kids that are being recruited by the gangs or by these units to go and commit the crimes. So they're being stopped, but what we're trying to do, and Fadi mentioned it, the chief mentioned it last week, they're going to go up, they want to go up higher as to who's organizing and who's calling the shots. But it's sad to see that we have 14, 15-year-olds actually committing these crimes. We're stopping them. We stopped some in St. Leonard. The shooting you mentioned in Old Montreal last week, we stopped the 3, and again, there was two young kids in that too, part of the shooting. So, we're making arrests, but there's a lot more to do.
But it is now fair to say all of this is linked. Are you comfortable saying that all of this stuff that we've seen is linked to some extent?
I can't go. I'm not the expert. I'm going to let the chief of police, Fadi, mention that. He's having a press conference this afternoon.
Yeah.
I'll let him go into details. All I can say is that we're providing him with everything he needs. Mm-hmm. Arrests are being made. There's a strategy in place that's called the collectives. That's interesting to know. The collective is where the SPVM actually targets certain youth and individuals and work with the families. They work with the community groups. They work with everyone to try and either prevent the crime or stop it when it arrives and stop the kids to, at an early age so that they don't further themselves in a pattern of crime. So that's called the collectives. That's working, and we have good results with that. That's how we. That's part of the way we stop the kids in the St. Leonard.
We're with Alain Vaillancourt, who's head of public security on the executive committee at the city of Montreal. Alain, it seems like you're describing, not organized crime, disorganized crime. You're describing chaos. In fact, one of the things that I've heard thrown about this week is if somebody asked you, hey, do you want to open up a restaurant next week? You'd have to be crazy in this city right now to open up a restaurant in light of extortion and all of this kind of stuff. What are you doing to ensure that, businesses here aren't being targeted left, right, and center, sometimes by multiple different groups as part of this chaos with extortion attempts?
Well, the first thing that I wouldn't.
Because this is
encourage
That's
everyone.
Not new, right?
It's not new.
Yeah.
The extortion aspect, and the Montreal has a history. Every city has a history of some type of activity of that kind. What we're seeing now is this different type of activity. We had this in the early '80s. I wouldn't discourage anyone from opening up businesses. I think we need more businesses. What I would tell them is that if they have any, if they're approached by anyone, right at the beginning, to call the people out and to call the SPVM. I think the restaurateurs and the business are hesitant to do it for all kinds of reasons, but it's really important that we get the information quickly so that we could open up investigations. There's a lot of investigations open up. There'll probably be some conclusions to those shortly. So that's the first thing I would tell everyone is to, when you do open up and you get a threat, report it. We also have the Eclipse unit. We've talked about the Eclipse unit where they go in. That's been on for several years. They visit establishments. And now a lot of restaurant owners actually don't mind the visit of the Eclipse because it shows that their business is, is taken care of and is looked at. So we're providing the support we can. The effect and the manpower is there. There's a lot of stuff, and I always say this when people ask me questions like, what are you doing? I don't see stuff happening on the streets. There's so much being done that you don't see, that I can't necessarily talk about, and the police chief himself will tell you what's happening, but not all the details. But there's a lot of stuff happening, investigations, undercover, you name it, and a lot of arrests are being made, and and a lot of conclusions, a lot of things that will be coming up in
just
the
on
future.
That. A lot of arrests are being made. I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah,
but I want to ask you, because something that is coming up time and time again across the country is the police are doing their job. They're making an arrest. 17, 19, 20-year-old shots fired, right? The arrests are done. They're captured. They are apprehended. And then they end up back on the street. Is there a problem in the criminal justice system right now about releasing people that have done something, that they've been arrested, and they're released either on bail or a promise to appear when they should be kept behind bars?
Well, what I can tell you is what I see here happening in Montreal and concretely with the SPVM. If I take, for example, some of the things that you're seeing now, to build a case is a lot more complex than it used to be. So they need the time to build a case, to get the information, to get all the evidence. They send it to Quebec City, to the prosecutor. They decide if they press charges or not, and to what degree. So it's a long process from getting the information to arresting someone. Then you arrest somebody. And for all kinds of reasons, there's bail, there's probation, they're back on the street. But we have zero control on that.
So I know you have zero control. Are you frustrated with the fact that the bail and the parole is happening? Because I keep hearing stories. Oh yeah, this person known to police was arrested 12 times before, was out on the street.
Well, of course I have a frustration, but I need to concentrate on what we can control here in the city. And that's what I try and do. We control everything we can as far as arresting people, as far as investigations, providing the resources, the SPVM.
Sure, I get that.
And, but we meet with Quebec City, I met with Ministre Bonardel last week on the site of the fire. Yeah. We had discussions on all kinds of topics. So when I get the occasion to talk to the people who are responsible for those in Quebec City, I do so. So does our chief, Fadi Daguerre. So, there's a frustration, but we can't stop at that and
I get it.
limit ourselves to what we do in Montreal.
I get it. And I've seen your colleagues, like for public transit, I've seen your colleagues rail against the Quebec government for their lack of action on funding and all this kind of stuff. What I'm saying is, sometimes it feels like there's a hesitance to rail against the federal government for decisions that they make like this. The reason why people are out on bail and parole so easily is because of decisions made in Ottawa. And I don't see the same railing against like I've seen your colleagues do up to Quebec City all the time. That's what I'm trying to point out. Should there not be more of a banging of the drum from local officials about dealing with crime?
Well, we do it. The chief does it. Quebec City has their own reasons why some of these, perpetrators are back on the street too. I mean, it's not under all their controls. The laws are there. There's rights. There's a charter of rights. So it's not, not everyone has the control as to what, who's going to go behind bars, and we're all tied into a system that has laws and rights, and we work within that. Yeah. That's the best we can do, and with that, we do everything we can to make sure that people are safe in Montreal.
I hear that, and then we got to leave it there and just say, we also have to think about the rights of the citizens that just want to live their day to day and not feel safe, right? And those rights really do matter.
Thanks,
Alain. Be well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.